I want to thank you for joining me here. This is Let's Talk Native. Hey, it's Monday, May 7th, 2018, and I'm happy to be here. I want to welcome Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, and no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people. We look back at our glorious and our grave history and a tough look at where we're at now. And I look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and streaming, broadcasting and simulcasting and rebroadcasting on the Gwe, the CKWA in Tandanega. You can find us at www.ltnradionet.com. I am John Kane, the show's host and producer. And hey, like I said, I'm happy to be here. I opened up with Robert Freight Train Parker. He's going to join me at the bottom of the hour. We're going to talk about some exciting news for him. His live CD, which I opened up the show with, is a Freight Train Live, by the way, is nominated for Best Blues Album at the Indigenous Music Awards. So Robert will join us, and we haven't had him on the show in a while. He's joined us before, but I look forward to having Robert join us, and we'll kind of gauge his excitement over this thing and his anticipation of heading out to Winnipeg, and of course we'll wish him luck. I was fortunate enough to be at his live performance that was captured on the CD, and it was a great night. My wife and I joined him, and it was, it's hard to believe because Robert's been involved in music for so many years that this is actually, I'm pretty sure this is his first CD. This is his first disc. I mean, so it's a great tribute to him that his first CD is nominated, just nominated for such a prestigious award. So again, I congratulate Robert and the band for that success and for that honor. So, but before we get to that, I've stirred up a little bit of a debate, and and of course that's what I do. I mean, the whole purpose of doing a show like this is to stimulate conversation. And this debate wasn't entirely of my own making, because it was a listener who called into my show in New York, who questioned not just the use, but our use as Native people of the word assimilation. And my immediate knee-jerk reaction was to say, no, they've been trying to assimilate us. They've been, assimilation is genocide, and and get into the whole thing, which all of that stuff is true. But then, as I listened to him and I heard him out, and then I thought about it, my long train ride back from New York, I started really thinking about this thing. And the word assimilation, in spite of the fact that we know what it's really all about, that it's making us disappear as a people, which has its own set of obviously ethnic cleansing, genocide, whatever you want to call it, overtones to it. But on the face of it, when you hear somebody say something like genocide or like assimilation, I'm sorry, it sounds almost inclusive. Like, come on in, the water's fine. You'll acclimate, you'll assimilate, you'll be just like us in here. So when you hear the expression assimilation, it sounds inclusive. It sounds like, yeah, they want you to join the party. But then, you got to think about it. And you really have to think about it, because if America, I mean, if this, what they want to call this, I don't know, this democracy experiment, if you want to call it that, I don't know that I'd go there. But if they were really trying to assimilate us, what that meant is that they would try to be bringing us into their society. They would be bringing us into all aspects of their society, right? I mean, they would be, when they did these residential schools, they'd be teaching our kids all of these pre-college courses, right? Nah, that's not what they did. They would be, welcoming us into all levels of society. And that's not what they were at. In fact, let me play something for you here. This will give you an example. This is a small clip from, it's actually audio from the Doctrine of Discovery film by Stephen Newcomb and Sheldon Wolfchild. but it's somebody voicing over quotes from Senator Harlan from Iowa, and this is 1865. But let me see if I can get this thing to play here, and this will give you an idea just what their view of us were. And this is just the end of a quote, but let me see if I can get this here.
If they refuse to merge into and become part of the superior race, they must necessarily be destroyed. It is a law of humanity.
All right, so there you have Senator Harlan from Iowa basically saying, if we refuse to merge with the superior race, now think about that. If this white man is sitting there looking at us as an inferior, primitive, not just people, but a primitive race, meaning an inferior race, and what he's suggesting is that it's just a matter of choice, and that we are refusing to merge with a superior race. For one thing, if we were inferior, how could we merge with a superior race? And I know I've talked about this before, but this quote is one of the ones that hangs on me, especially as you have this this kind of debate over assimilation. See, the point wasn't that we would ever merge with the superior race. The point is that we would just occupy the bottom of their social structure, the bottom of their economic structure. We would be the grunts. We would be, black men and red men would occupy that bottom of their society. It wasn't to merge with them. It wasn't to assimilate. It wasn't to become doctors and lawyers, or bankers or accountants, or middle management. No. It was going to be the guys who had to do the work. Yeah, you couldn't get free labor out of, slavery was essentially ended in 1865 when he made this quote, supposedly, although I would argue it still continues today. And at those residential schools, they weren't teaching skills. They weren't teaching vocational training for meaningful jobs. The only training that a woman came out of those residential schools was if they were going to be a housemaid, if they were going to be somebody's servant. And the men, they learned to march. So all they were going to be trained for were to be pawns in somebody's, again, military industrial complex. Oh, yeah, they did some farming. But you know what? This wasn't about teaching somebody to run a farm. This was just putting these guys as grunt labor into the fields, so these residential schools could make money off of farming, and of course, supplement the food that they wouldn't have to buy for these schools. I mean, this is the stuff that I think gets missed in these conversations. And again, my kudos to the caller who suggested that we be careful with that word. Now, don't get me wrong. The policy of the United States was called assimilation. I mean, the policies of those of the residential schools was kill the Indian, meaning well, however you want to interpret that. But what they meant was, let's just save the vessel, and let's get rid of all the. And in fact, this is where I get back to this to my new thoughts about the word redskin. See, this is where white men created this concept. Not only redskin in terms of scalping and paying bounties for those skins, but even when you could strip all of the native person and all you would be left would be the red skin. See, this is what their so-called assimilation was about. Let's get rid of all of the native stuff, and then we'll have a body that can work. We can have a beast of burden with red skin. See, that's what the residential schools was about. That's what the causing such abject poverty in our territories was all about. And sure, you could sit back and just like you'll hear so many of the white privilege today talk about, well, if anybody wants to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, forget the fact that they may not have boots or straps. And that's what we hear when we hear. I was listening to a program in NPR today, and these people were calling in and says, well, if I say that I'm white, then I'm a racist. If I say that I'm a man, I'm a sexist. If I say that I'm a Christian, I'm a bigot. No, if you're a white racist and you're a male sexist and you're a Christian bigot, then that's what you are. But white doesn't make you a racist. It may mean you have white privilege because you're white. But how you conduct yourself and how you view others and how you look at people that you think are beneath you and how you create that hierarchy of people above you or below you, that's where racism comes in. So my debate is the word assimilation versus the word subjugation. Because if you're going to place people below you, that's the definition of the word. I mean, subjugation is about putting somebody, again, the etymology of the word is literally placing somebody under the yoke. Now, if you don't know what a yoke is that wooden device that you put over the oxen's head and neck and shoulders. The yoke is that device that they place on the shoulders of that beast of burden to do work. So placing somebody under the yoke is where that word subjugation, that's where it comes from. Subjugation is not assimilation. Subjugation is about placing somebody beneath you. Now there are other words like subordinate, which is the same thing, about putting something below you. When I talk about federally recognized tribes, the definition of a federally recognized tribe is a tribe, band, or nation of Indians subordinate to the laws of the United States. So essentially what they're saying is these are tribes that have been subjugated by the United States. Now, look, the United States claims that there's 567 federally recognized tribes. That might be the definition that they try to use for those 567 tribes, but that's or peoples, whatever you want to call them. But that's not the definition that we have. I'm pretty sure the Saugatuck Nation doesn't feel like that they've been subjugated by the United States. Look, lots of land's been stolen. I know Mohawks don't feel that way. Lots of land has been stolen. We've been defrauded in any number of ways. But to say that we've been subjugated, now don't get me wrong. In 1924, the United States passed a law, and it was called the Snyder Act or Snyder Bill or the Snyder Law, and it was also called the Indian Citizenship Act. And this is where the United States Senate declared that all Native people living within the continental United States were hereby citizens of the United States. And of course, that's BS. That's illegal. You can't just declare somebody to be subjugated by you. I mean, we never surrendered. We never, we never consented to this claim that we were all U.S. citizens. Now, the sad part is, and this could be true with assimilation and subjugation, at some point, we have to figure out where our role is in resisting this kind of thing. So we could argue that as cultures coexist, there's a certain amount of assimilation that happens, naturally happens. And not a subjugation, but just assimilation. I mean, you're going to have, white people pick up things from Native people, and you're going to have Native people pick up things from white people. Black people are going to pick up things from white people. White people are going to pick up, they're going to, appropriate different things like music and culture and foods and obviously territories. So there's all of these things that happens where cultures, I'm not going to say they melt and they meld completely together, but there's a certain level of assimilation that takes place. And it happens to all of us. Now, the idea of me wearing blue jeans and a T-shirt and understanding that white people wear blue jeans and T-shirts and black people wear blue jeans and T-shirts, and we could say, okay, see, they're all the same. Well, I would argue, no, we're not the same. We just happen to be wearing similar clothing. And to see, this is the battle we get in. Oftentimes, we have our own Native people not just embrace this concept of full and complete assimilation, but they don't just embrace it to themselves. They try to force it upon on their own. And when you force assimilation, that's where it starts to become subjugation. And especially when you suggest that we're going to put you at the bottom of our rungs of society. So some of the examples of voluntary assimilation, I say it all the time, things like church, things like surrendering your language, and we had generations of our people who just decided they weren't going to teach the next generation to speak our language. That was voluntary. That wasn't nobody made it illegal to teach your children to speak our language, but at some point, our parents and grandparents thought, you know what, our kids might be better off without this. It may be more of a burden, to them. And we have to assume that was the decision they made. But it was wrong. And that's, again, voluntary assimilation. Signing up for their military service. I mean, there could be no greater example of assimilating into the dominant culture around you by sacrificing your body, literally, and your life to defending their ideals, not your ideals, their ideals. I mean, so look, and I know people did it for a variety of reasons. Some because there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity left for our people during some of those periods of time, or we feel a sense of despair and we look to something like military service. And I'm not condemning it outright. I'm just saying that it is an example of signing on to the dominant culture, voting in their elections, running in their elections, all of that stuff. It isn't just a function of what you do to support yourself, and whether it's you get a job. I heard somebody say, "Well, I work for corporate America, so I guess I'm assimilated." Well, I guess you can, but that's still not the same thing as sacrificing your ideals to do that. That's about putting money, food on the table. And so I view that personally a little bit different. Now, subjugation is completely different, but our people sign up to that too. I mean, how many times have you felt like not only just quote unquote tribal leaders, but how many times have you felt like that even your neighbor was trying to impose, just let it go, don't resist, whether it's a pipeline, going through your territory, or whether it's standing up against, any kind of racism, whether it's a mascot issue, whether it's outright racism. I mean, the example I talked about in the last show that has now taken on a lot of attention, not just nationally, but internationally, these two young Mohawk boys who went to Colorado State University and then were profiled by some white woman who suggested that they were, they made her nervous. And so they got yanked out of a tour for the college. I mean, we can just say, well, let it go. It's no big deal. They didn't beat us or anything. They just, we just wasted our day. And so when people tell you to let it go, that's not just assimilation. That's saying no, take the lower position in their culture. So there is a difference. And when you look at the entire policy of the United States, I mean, if you look at the 5 policies that the United States claims to have had regarding Native people. I mean, it starts with extermination. Then it's removal. Then it's assimilation. And I say then because some of this stuff doesn't just one period stop and a new one start. I mean, termination existed for, we could argue that it went in. We could argue it still goes on, because when you talk about sterilizing women in the residential schools that was going on for, into the 1900s, you're talking about termination or extermination. Isn't just the idea of killing somebody. It's the idea of ensuring that they can't reproduce. So that's extermination, right? So that wasn't just a brief period of time. That extended for a long time. Removal, yeah, that wasn't just the removal period. During the Nixon administration, there was an effort to relocate Native people from there was a lot of conversation, conversation about what a bad idea it was to allow these reservations to have existed. And we got to get those Native people off the reservation. And today, by some estimates, and I'm not sure I necessarily believe these, but the estimates drawn from census information, that 70% of the Native population does not live on Native territories anymore. They live in the cities. They live, in other areas off territory. So that effort to remove us from our communities and place us in cities and get us, and some of these, like the relocation programs, actually would pay a Native person to leave their territory. They would set them up with some crappy job in some crappy apartment. And, that's how Minneapolis, St. Paul got such a large Native population right in the city. And many others. I mean, every major city's got, maybe 100,000 Native people living in that city. It may not be that noticeable, but a lot of those, a lot of that history of getting Native people in those cities came from a federal policy. So relocation was still part of the removal period, the removal policy. And of course, then you get into assimilation. Now, assimilation was also something that began at the very beginning, before the Cherokee were being forced on the Trail of Tears. There were many policies that were trying to get Native people to live like white people. And you know what? Some people did. The Cherokees did. And the Cherokees did it better than white people. They built a thriving economy. They were industrious. They had manufacturing. They learned how to do the logging and the sawmills and all the stuff that they had going. They were actually demonstrating more success than the white people around them, and that did nothing but get the white people pissed. So assimilation wasn't the full bore policy. But again, when you lay these things overlay these things, you've got extermination, you've got the removal period, you've got assimilation, and then with assimilation, when they felt like they could say, okay, we've assimilated them, we don't have to recognize them as Native people anymore. That's where the period of termination came. It says, well, we're simply you're just Americans now. You're not. You can call yourself Navajo or Apache or Cherokee, or just like we Americans call themselves Irishmen and Italians or whatever else. But no, you're Americans now. We don't have to recognize you as a distinct people anymore. You're just a part of it. And so that's where termination came in. Then there became another policy that they called self-determination, which was recognizing that for all of their termination, for all of their assimilation, that we were still maintaining some levels of distinction that they couldn't make go away. And that's just a matter of fact. And so then there became, well, we will recognize them. We're not going to recognize them as sovereigns anymore. We'll put the word tribal sovereignty, tribal in front of it, and we'll call it something else. And we'll let them organize themselves as members of a tribe, not as a distinct people again. So even then, that policy would subjugate our people as a group within the bottom rungs of American society. But so those are the five policies that and that's pretty well established that the United States had towards Native people, and Canada, by the way. But the question is, was assimilation really about encouraging some place like Cherokee to develop a thriving economy? No. Or the Osage, for instance, when they had oil money? No. They still would make sure that the people stayed subjugated, even when they had money, even when they had industry, even when we had wealth and resources, all that stuff. They would still do everything they can to subjugate us, to put us beneath them. And that's why I agree with my caller who called me in New York and said assimilation isn't really an accurate word. Look, I got to agree with that. And so the question is, do we really feel like we've been included? Does two boys at Colorado State University feel like they're included in a part of, that they're a part of American society, or do they feel like, nah, we're subjugated and we're treated as something less? I would argue that if you compare those two concepts, assimilation versus subjugation, it's subjugation that is what our people still experience, and so because assimilation you would assume that there's no racism there. Yeah, you're just a part of come on, you're just part of the American family. Line up with for the American dream. See, subjugation says, no, don't even try it. It's not available to you. Your job is to help us achieve the American dream. You had the American dream. We took it from you. We stomped it out, and now you get to sit at the bottom of our, in the cellar of our society. That's what subjugation is. I mean, the idea that you've got New York State, for instance, still trying to interfere with us even doing native-to-native trade. The idea of saying, no, you can't do that. You got to follow our laws. That's not just forced assimilation. That's subjecting us. That's subjugation. That's subjecting us to their laws when they have no foundation, no legal right to do so. See, that's what our people are missing. So when we use that word assimilation, we better make sure that we put some, some air quotes or some parentheses or whatever, or redefine it and make sure that when we say this, that it's assimilation, that we really mean subjugation. We better take the time to explain it. It's the same thing, when we talk about words like sovereignty. I think we should explain what we mean by sovereignty: the power to make our own decisions, the right and the authority to make our own decisions. I mean, that's what sovereignty, means to me. It's not because I think God ordained me to be the sovereign. I don't even believe the whole God thing. But I mean, what I will say is that my birthright empowers me to carry myself and to carry the people around me and to help and to be a human being. And that's where sovereignty is a birthright. That's not the way it was treated in Europe. With the church and the monarchy and that close association, they said, oh no, God preordained that certain people had the right and God's authority to rule over others. That was one of the greatest lies ever told. So I mean, and by assuming that you can have that kind of hierarchy, that's the whole notion of subjugation. It's about people saying, no, I can place others below me. So even when the colonists decided they're going to revolt from the motherland of Great Britain, they made sure they kept hierarchy. They just didn't want the monarchy ruling over them, but they still wanted to rule over slaves. They still wanted to have a position over women. They still wanted to have a position over indentured servants and people who didn't have the same kind of money. There was still aristocracy that was well and firmly entrenched in early America, in the early colonies. And that is the white privilege that people still struggle with today. That is absolutely still the struggle. I mean, when I hear a white person say, well, if I say I'm white, then it means I'm a racist. If I say that I'm a man, I'm a sexist. And if I say that I'm a Christian, I'm a bigot. No. If you're making those connections between white and racism, man and sexism and Christian and bigot, then you probably are. You probably are those three things if you're making that connection. But no other part, nobody's dictating that to you. Nobody's making that assumption until you say something, until you do something, until you act a certain way. When you use your faith, to condemn people, that's bigotry. Sure. When you use your male the concept of male domination to deride and to be misogynistic towards women, yeah, that's sexism. And if you use your white privilege and you not just enjoy and exercise that white privilege, which many people do who may not necessarily be white racist, but when you are a part of entrenching that system, and if you are a part of making sure that people stay below you because of the color of their skin, then you're racist. Hey, where's the bottom of the hour? I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to go out with a little bit more Robert Freight Train Parker, and then I'm going to get him on the phone, and we're going to have a conversation with Robert. So, look, I'm in studio by myself, so if I fumble around here a little bit, please bear with me, but we'll see if we can pull this thing off here.
Everybody get on your feet. You make me nervous when you're in your seat. Take off your shoes and pat your feet. We're doing a dance that can't be beat. We're barefoot. Hey, we're barefoot. Barefoot. Hey, we're barefoot. Went to a party the other night. Long tall Sally was out of sight. Two-way wig and her high sneakers too. She was doing a dance without any shoes. We're barefoot. Hey, we're barefoot. Barefoot. Ooh, we're barefoot. Come on.
All right, that's a little barefooting by Freight Train, Robert Freight Train Parker and Company. So I got Robert coming right up next, but just bear with me just for a second here. I do want to thank my sponsor. I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises, Legacy 420. I also want to thank my friends who make contributions to the program from time to time, guys like Ed Schindler and Cynthia Trice, Roger Jock, Neville Spring. Hey, I also want to thank all of you who have helped in the past. Now, I say this every week because I think it's important that we're just about entering into our 9th year now. And we wouldn't be here if I didn't have some strong support from people, not just the ones who support me now, but the ones who've supported me in the past, especially when I was doing commercial radio and paying, a lot of money to be on, those commercial radio stations. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank you for helping me to educate, entertain, and inform for these last 8 years. I sure do appreciate it. I thank you for doing your part and for joining in the fight. I want to thank Unity Stream and Apache Radio Net for providing our streaming, and I also want to thank CKWE again for their simulcast and rebroadcast of the show. I want to thank Netroots Radio, Real People's Media, and Indigenous Resistance Radio for carrying Let's Talk Native on their networks. And of course, I want to thank all the folks who share the show. Last week's show, obviously struck something. I think we got almost we're pushing 3,000 views almost on my last show. So hey, keep it up. Keep sharing the program. Whether you're sharing the Facebook live stream, whether you're sharing the YouTube videos that we capture afterwards, trim it up a little bit. And of course, watching the YouTube videos, there's you don't have the hiccups that you sometimes get on a live stream. And, of course, sharing the SoundCloud audio that we post up after the show. I want to thank you all for doing that. And, of course, especially my wife. She shares the show a lot when we first go live streaming. And I think she contributes probably in the biggest way to the number of views that we get on the show. So let me go ahead and first, I'm trying to do this. I haven't done a phone guest in a while here, so I'm going to bring in Robert Freight Train Parker. Robert, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Kind of tough.
All right. Can you hear all right or no?
Well, I'm getting me.
Oh, you're getting a little bit of feedback, a little echo? Okay. Well, you sound good on this side, so you'll have to bear with how it sounds on your end, and just trust me that it sounds good on our end.
Yeah, kind of tough to hear you, John.
All right. Hey, let me see. All right. Well, let me. Hopefully, we can get through this best we can.
That's better.
Okay. All right. You got a hold of me. I didn't realize that your CD, your first live CD, your first CD, Freight Train Live, has been nominated in the Indigenous Music Awards for Best Blues Album. Congratulations on that. That's just great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I submitted it. Somebody suggested I submit it, and I was notified that it was nominated for Best Blues CD, and that was a fun CD. I mean, I basically, did it. You were there.
I was there
live, and had a bunch of great players on it, the reason I did it was because I went down to Florida and played, and the place was packed, and I was like, man, I need to have some product. and it turned into this, and the rest is history, I guess.
Well, let's give a shout out to some of the people who performed on the CD first off, because you had some special guests there, not just your they were all kind of normal crew for you at one time or another, but for this CD, I know it was a great show, and you had quite a cast there. So give a shout out.
My band is Freight Train now is Damone Jackson on drums, Greg Leach on keys, and Grace Logan on guitar. And I brought up, each instrument, one at a time. I brought my brother Ken up. He plays sax, and then I had Jeremy Keys playing harp, and Willie Haddeth, Johnny James, and Jim Bohm played trumpet. So, at one point we were all up there, and for the finale, and it was just, and it was sold out. It was crazy. People were blowing up my phone, and they wanted to get in. There was people. It was so crazy. People were outside looking in the windows.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. It was a good time.
It was really quite an experience, and it's can't even explain the feeling.
No,
it was really fun. This town is great.
Well,
you
and,
know,
and
supporting live
you've been playing
music.
Buffalo. I mean, and so many different places. I know I've seen you at Talties and a few other places.
Hmm.
So you've been a part of the Buffalo music scene for many years. I mean, so certainly playing the Sportsman's Tavern was nothing new for you.
Well, actually, I had never played there.
Really? Man, I didn't
did
know
I
that.
did a benefit there, you know,
Okay.
but I mean I played one set or a couple times, just not as the band. That was really basically our first show there.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
And yeah, and then afterwards, now we're there every first Friday of the month, happy hour, and it's fun. I mean, we pack the place. It's great. It's a great music venue, you
Yeah,
know.
it is. It's a lot of fun. And the fact that you have an upstairs, and yeah, I changed positions a few times so I get different looks at how you guys were set up and the way you sound. And
Right.
it was a
Yeah.
good night. I know my wife and I very much enjoyed the show, and we appreciated
Yeah.
getting the heads up and being a part of it. So,
Yeah.
it's a great time.
We got great players in the city, and you know, and I moved away for a while, went down to Florida, and then I toured a lot, and moving back here was really, it was the right move, you know. And with the players around here right now, I'm standing out in the parking lot in California Road because I'm mixing an album. I'm producing my wife Sarah's album,
Oh, awesome.
and
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it we have great players in this area, and it was, you know, I was inducted into the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame a
Yeah.
couple of years ago or
Yeah.
so, and
That's
so
cool.
you know, it's a
Hey,
good
I
town.
gotta ask you because when you're a part of a music scene, you get to play with a lot of people over the years.
Hmm.
Is there anybody? I know that we lose musicians, as time goes on, and
Hmm.
is there anybody that you would like to give a special shout out as far as somebody that you've played with and that you feel like that you've lost, especially in the last year or so? I mean, is there anybody that comes to mind?
You mean that it has passed
Has
away?
passed on? Yeah, has passed on.
Man, let me think. There's been a few. It's kind of sad.
And I hate
I
to put
put
you
it
on the
on.
spot. Just that, I always feel like sometimes you got to pay tribute because, a lot of times, especially if they have recorded music, it's great that many of us can look up these musicians and
Yeah.
hear their music still. But it's also
Yeah, I've had some friends pass away, but a really big one for me was Greg Allman, you know.
right. Yeah.
But there's guys. It's kind of, I'm getting to that age where, you're losing them more than you're gaining them. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of tough. I'm 55, or I'll be 55, but the Greg Allman thing, man, it was tough because, you know, my dad had that Live at the Fillmore record, man, and I put it on, and it was like, whoa, and it kind of really pushed me along into the music scene, and having those guys around for 45 years,
Yeah, I remember
and
listening to Medlock talk about him when Blackfoot came to town, played at the casino,
Yeah.
and he was, Greg is one of those guys that is singular in the fact that so many people are, can say that he influenced them to either get into music or to maintain their presence in
Yeah.
music, and yeah, so well, that's
They
good.
were
That's a good one.
they were like that really cool original jam band, but they were just as polished as well. And when Greg passed away, it's like, you know what? I never do tributes or anything, but I did a tribute for him at the Trowel, and I had like a 12-piece band, and we sold out the Trowel,
Awesome,
So,
awesome.
but yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, and the band I have now, we kind of go towards that Allman Brothers thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and a lot of people do,
Yep.
you know.
No, I hear it. I hear it.
Yeah.
So this awards event is on May 18th. Is the whole crew going out, or are you
No.
able to make the trip, or no?
I'm making a trip. I'm
Okay.
going there on the 16th, and it's kind of cool because they have a couple days of conferences, and you get to hang out with some record people and some
Have you been to Winnipeg
agencies.
before? Are you familiar with Winnipeg?
I've been to Winnipeg
Yeah.
a long time ago. I toured with a band out of Canada, and so I did the whole Canada,
Cool.
West Coast, East Coast thing, and um, I'm looking forward to it, man. The conferences and to hang out. There's a powwow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So the awards ceremony's on the 18th, the Friday night, and then Saturday and Sunday's the powwow. So it's perfect.
A few years ago, a hip hop band, Red Cloud. Let's see, Lightning Cloud is what the group is, because it's Crystal Lightning, and Red Cloud. They paired up, and they were I don't know if they got an award, but they were performing there anyway at that venue, or at that awards thing. And about a month or so before that, I saw these guys, and they had done a photo session, and they had like American flags and stuff like that. I said, I gotta send you guys a warrior flag. Not talking the American flag, but you. So I put it in the mail. I sent it out to them, and then they used it they had it in the backdrop on their stage when they did their show at the Indigenous Music Awards, which was kind of cool.
That's cool.
But
I'm honored, man. I mean, and the Indigenous Music Award, I think it means a lot more to me than anything.
No, it is. Well, again, one of the things that I think blues, Native people, you can almost go to any Native community, and there's a blues band. So every community has, and some of these guys are really good. I mean, there have been some great blues band. Obviously, Murray Porter and Pappy Johns and these guys. Cornbread out in Onondaga. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, there's a great song by this band. They were called Blue Nation, and I think they were from Oklahoma. But they had a song. I got their album years ago, and the song that really stuck with me was one called "My People Have the Right to Sing the Blues."
Yeah.
It was perfect, man. Yeah. You know what? We grew up with it, man. My dad, they had a band, and
sure,
putting on those blues albums, and it's a part of us.
Well, and again, I think more than any other genre, I mean, blues has become, there's a connection. I mean, obviously, its roots are in not just in coming from black musicians, but as the movie Rumble, I don't know if you've got a chance to see that film, but it's its title track is Link Ray's guitar, the power chord, so to speak. But that whole history, it shows how how strong the Native and black relationship was in the development of not just blues, but music in general, rock and roll, but blues. I mean, all the way up through. And I think that's why it's such an easy music easy genre for Native people to be drawn to, because it has that same feel. I mean, where we're singing about the hardships and yet the perseverance at the same time. And I think celebrating music is a way to not just, get past the blues. I mean, literally feeling the blues, but, it's that whole idea of celebrating in music. And I think guys like you and your band and so many others do it in such a way that I think we all rejoice in it to some extent.
Of course. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a great genre, man. I grew up on, I played a lot, and it leads to everything else. I mean, jazz, rock.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line. Some of these, even folk and like you said, rock. I mean, jazz. I mean, it gets real close. In fact, there's many songs that I think cross over into either one of those genres, one way or the other. And obviously, the Allman Brothers is a perfect example of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Those guys used to hang out on the reservations.
Yeah.
I was at Jackson Brown the other night, and he threw a big shout out to the Seneca people, and I was fortunate enough to meet him after and talk about it.
Yeah, he was featured in the Rumble also.
Right.
That the guitar lick, Jesse Davis did that that guitar lick in Doctor My Eyes. And
yep.
and it was like one take, and he talks about how I don't like that song. I don't see me in that one. He goes, I can do this one, and he just rips it off. And so Jackson Brown is another one of those guys who saw the musicians,
cool,
right? Yeah,
right. He was so cool. He's so down to earth, man, and he knows his stuff. He's a great writer and a great person. It was very great. It was an enlightening situation. I really was impressed,
Yeah.
He left a mark on me, like a lot of guys did too. All these people I've met through my whole career, and I feel like I'm just beginning, man.
Well, like I said, I can't believe that you've been doing music for so long, and this is actually your first CD. And I'm very, I couldn't be prouder of you, and and more, to see this happen and have your first CD be nominated for a pretty prestigious award. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
it's not like there's a void in blues musicians in Indian country. So I mean,
Right.
to be nominated for this in the at the Indigenous Music Awards, like I said, there's a lot of blues musicians across
Yeah,
across
I
native
know.
territories. So you're not in a small company there. Yeah.
It's funny because I didn't, I'm not a real big person on awards and all that, but like I said, this is kind of special, to be, because I'm kind of the new guy.
Yeah.
You see the same people nominated all the time, and it's kind of cool, to be, hey, I'm the new guy, man. That's all right.
You know what I like about these awards, though, is that it's one of those unique times when you either go to an awards, or especially if you're nominated, you get to meet so many people that you may have crossed paths with, and maybe some that that you've heard of that you've never had the opportunity. So enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I really hope that
I
you
will.
get a chance to mingle with some people that and get to know some new people and make some new friends, and who knows,
Yeah.
maybe people say, hey man, I gotta follow that Freight Train Parker back to Buffalo and see if I
That's
can't
right.
play some venues out there. So
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
definitely.
well, I want to thank you.
Hey.
Hey, I want to thank you for reaching out to me. It's a pleasure to have you
Yeah.
on. I got to get you on. Here's one of the things that I've talked about this even on my show here. I would love to find somebody, and I'll throw this out there to you, to mull it over. I would love to find a Native person who would like to produce a radio program, a 1-hour weekly radio program of just Native blues. And I was thinking something like A Red Shade of Blues is the name for a show. And I would love
Sure.
to be a part of helping that come to fruition. And I don't
I
want
would
to host it
absolutely love
myself.
that.
But if you could,
I would love it.
hey man, if you have any contacts or anybody who you think that might be interested in, they don't have to be a blues musician themselves. They just have to enjoy the music. And I think that there's so many great musicians out there. I think we could create a show that we could probably send it out across the country, and we can get a lot of stations to carry such a thing.
I'd love to be a part of it.
Well,
I'll come on. I've done it before. Radio.
Well, I know you were doing some of that stuff down
Yeah.
in Salamanca at the Guaya.
Yep,
You and
yep. And I do have connections, a lot of connections, and that would be great.
well,
I'd love
let's
to
let's do it. I'd love to see
right.
a program like that done. And in the meantime, you
course.
enjoy yourself, enjoy this ride that you're on,
Thanks.
and
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck out there. But you know what? Win, lose, or draw, I'm just glad to see you recognized for doing such a
Yeah.
great job
Me-
on this CD.
It's very, very. Thanks for having me, John.
All right.
Appreciate it.
You take
All
care of
right.
yourself. It's good to talk
Yes,
to you.
sir.
That's
You too.
that's
Bye.
Robert Freight Train Parker. And again, it was an absolute pleasure for me to have gone out to be a part of that show. It was a great show, and again, he brought in not just his current band members, but guys that he's played with along over the years. Guys were willing to step up and perform with him. And I'll tell you, I didn't, when I first met Ken Parker, I didn't know that he was a blues musician, and that's Robert's brother, and he plays one mean sax, man. I got to tell you, I enjoy listening to these guys thoroughly. If you are in Western New York, these guys play every week here. I mean, they're playing someplace. Look up Freight Train with Robert Freight Train Parker and Company, and you will not be disappointed. And I'll tell you, they don't. It's not just big venues. They play some pretty small venues. Like I said, Talthy's Tavern is one of the ones that I've gone listened to them play a number of times. But these guys are great. You'll really enjoy yourself listening to these guys. So again, if you're out here in Western New York, or if you're looking for a band to check out, then you need to check out Freight Train. And I wish them the best of luck heading out to Winnipeg for the Indigenous Music Awards on May 18th. I look forward to hearing the results. And that's a pretty look. There's Aboriginal People's Choice Awards, and there's the Native American Music Awards that the Seneca Nation hosts. I don't think there's an overabundance of Indigenous awards for musicians and other things. I think our people need all the credit that they deserve. The biggest problem that Native musicians have in terms of getting national and real commercial appeal is that if you we don't have the market in terms of the native people. We don't have a big enough numbers to just kind of coalesce around a musician. I mean, if you're a great black artist or a great white artist, or I mean, we're such a small population. We have to be able to cross over into other other groups of peoples to have any commercial success. And there are some that have. Obviously, I play them all the time. Buffy St. Marie and Pure Fay, and again, all those people who have been featured in that film Rumble, the Indians Who Rock the World. It shows that the talent is there. But oftentimes the obstacles that we face by being such a marginalized people is, it's tough. And that's what makes it so great when you see some of these guys who maintain a career in music, because, short of having that, making it big, it's a labor of love, to be a musician. You've got to love what you do, and hopefully you can have enough success that you don't have to be a starving artist at the same time. So again, my congratulations to Freight Train, the band, and Robert Freight Train Parker with their debut album being nominated for Best Blues Album of the Year, and up for that award in the Indigenous Music Awards out in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Hey, look, we're almost done with the program. A couple things I wanted to do here. It is May 7th, and for me, what May 7th is, it's the day before May 8th, and May 8th is a big day for me because I'm a grandfather, and almost 9 years ago, I had 2 granddaughters born on the same day. So tomorrow, my 2 granddaughters, by different daughters. I mean, I had 2 daughters that were giving birth at the same time, essentially, and so my 2 granddaughters, Julia White Pigeon and Raelle Hakes, were both born on May 8th, and that'll be 9 years ago tomorrow. So I want to wish my 2 baby girls, 2 of my 3 baby girls, as I call them, happy birthday for tomorrow, and look forward to spending time with them over the next couple of days, and as their parties stretch into the weekend, and maybe perhaps even into the summer. I don't know. I look forward to that. It is one of those honors that it's one thing to become a father or grandfather. It's another thing to have the relationship with your children and your grandchildren in such a way that you feel honored to have them a part of your life, and they feel the same way. And I know that my granddaughters love me to death. And look, I know I'm a little bit of a troublemaker for some people, but when it comes to my grandkids, they think I'm a softie, and I guess I really am. So again, I wish my 2 granddaughters happy 9th birthdays for tomorrow. So I wanted to get it out there. Look, other thing I wanted to acknowledge here. A couple of things. I came from the public meeting out at Buffalo Public School 19, the Native American Magnet School out there in Buffalo. For those of you who didn't know that it exists, well, there's a reason you don't. It isn't publicized very well. And if you come into the Buffalo School District and you're Native, when you go through the registration, they don't even let you know that there's a Native American Magnet School. It's almost like you got to discover it by accident, and it's part of the bureaucratic breakdown that exists. And and although there's over 500 Native kids that they know of that are enrolled in the Buffalo Public Schools, they aren't directed or given adequate information to say, look, if you want to be a part of a school that specializes and that is that has the largest Native population, here's where it is. It's Public School 19, and it's one of the things that I find a little frustrating. And of course, they do have funding that comes from the federal government. They don't get much special funding as for the Native programs from the regular school budget. And I'll tell you, Buffalo Schools is the school district is under the microscope constantly because of how they rate as it relates to the statewide testing and that kind of thing. the amount of money that goes that the school district spends per student versus the graduation rate and all that other stuff. And Native kids, are right there with any other marginalized people in terms of struggling with graduation rates. And there's no reason that we can't do better by the kids who are attending these Buffalo schools. I'm a strong advocate believing that the Seneca Nation should step up, especially now that they aren't involved in the revenue sharing with the state, that they should step up for some of these more local commitments, like putting money into Public School 19 and enhancing that school, so that when people do move to Buffalo and have children and they are Native, they know that there's a quality school that they go to, that school has something special to offer, not just a Native population, but some special programs that don't just come from federal funding, but they come from perhaps the Seneca Nation as well. So I wanted to mention that. Almost out of time, but I do have to mention that if you're not paying attention to what's happening in Hawaii, I don't want to just call what's happening in Hawaii a disaster, because it isn't. I mean, it's a disaster for people who lose their homes and that kind of stuff. But Hawaii is born out of volcanoes. That's how it comes into existence. And I think if you talk to the Native people, they think what is happening here is not a tragedy, that it is that is such a natural part of what Hawaii is all about. And I think it's a remarkable thing to watch. I mean, when you consider that these islands were born out of volcanoes, so when you see lava flowing, you realize that it's the growth. It is actually these territories growing in some way or some fashion. And to me, I think it's a powerful natural thing of beauty, of strength. And people can say that it's devastating, it's destructive. I don't know. I look at it as one of the. I mean, it is such an example of creation to watch a land base grow from within, from underneath. I mean, it's an incredible thing. But it's still a remarkable thing to see. And of course, those who are most affected by it are the occupiers of Hawaii, the ones who are so worried about their $1 million homes and that kind of thing. Look, I know there's Native people that are also losing homes in some of these places, but as you see me on Facebook live stream, you can see I got my Kanaka Maoli flag behind me. I feel strongly about what the people represent there in Hawaii, and I see what's happening right now as almost an honor to be able to witness these islands this island in particular, the Big Island, becoming that much bigger. So I think keep the Hawaiian people in your thoughts as they do produce fundraising especially for the indigenous people. And look, I'm not trying to throw anybody under a bus, but as there are some fundraising efforts made, and I'll put some of the stuff on my Facebook group pages as we go. I hope that you will support the Hawaiian people and reach out and get to know some of these folks. I'm a part of many of the group pages that are out there. You can look for a bunch of them. I post my show on some of them, and be sure to support the people as they overcome and get past the growing pains of the Big Island in Hawaii. And let's hope for the best in terms of everything from the earthquakes and tsunamis and eruptions that nobody's hurt. So anyway, I wanted to mention that. But watch it on the news. It's fascinating, and see the videos on Facebook and on YouTube. It's incredible footage, and it's remarkable to watch. So, hey, look, that about wraps it up. I want to thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for listening. I want to thank Robert Freight Train Parker for joining me. And like I said, let's keep the conversation going. All right, we'll go out with a little more of Freight Train.
I want somebody to love me. I need somebody I can hold. I want somebody to be my baby, satisfy my soul. I want somebody. I need somebody. Want somebody. Need somebody like me. Lay home not so restless, sleeping by myself. I need love so bad, pretty baby. just can't help myself. I want somebody